Good morning. My name is Gary Hahnemann. I'm the current chairperson for Carroll Citizens for Racial Equity. My colleague Clyde and I this morning are standing in front of this beautiful college where we're going to have our annual conference this June 9th.
I'm Clyde Johnson, and I am the Executive Director for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at Carroll Community College. Also the incoming chair of the CCRE. And we're so happy to welcome this event to our campus for the first time.
For a little background about CCRE, Carroll Citizens for Racial Equity, we've actually been in the county for just over 30 years. And a lot of times people think that perhaps we're the best kept secret in Carroll County in that we've been working at racial justice issues for over 3 decades now. We typically have an annual conference, but this is the first time we've had it at such a large and significant venue.
This has been a wonderful community endeavor for over 30 years to bring this conference to you. But this year we have a great sponsor. Gary, would you like to tell them about Hey Westminster?
Absolutely. We were so fortunate to learn about Hey Westminster, their initiatives in Carroll County, and we were thrilled to get notice that we had received the grant, which is going to go a long way to supporting individuals who can attend the conference who may not otherwise have been able to afford it. It's going to help us with securing some of the best keynote speakers and panel members with regard to racial justice here in Carroll County.
One of the takeaways that I would love for folks to walk away with is a better understanding of the issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion, really what they mean, but how it impacts all of us and how we all can be a positive change in the community, not just for a specific group of people, but for everyone. So again, we would love to welcome you to Carroll Community College on June 9th for the CCRE's annual conference. This year's conference title is
Working Together to Create a More Equitable Carroll County. You can be the change.
Be the change. You can find all the information on this conference at Carroll Community College's website. A registration link will be out very soon. We welcome you here. Hey Westminster, let's be awesome.
Good morning, everybody. Say, I'll use the mic and I'll use my speaker voice for you all. And I just wanted to say, first and foremost, thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here, to be invited to participate and deliver the first speech, the keynote for the day. I just want to say before I jump into everything that I am less of a speaker, I'm a teacher. Okay, I'm a facilitator, and that means I need energy from you guys. Okay, that's why I like being back in the classroom. I like seeing people face to face. And so there's some things even in this presentation where it might require a little bit of your involvement. Okay, you won't have to move around. All right, but you might have to raise your hand, right? You might have to, I'm going to ask for some participation. I just say, I need that even myself as a speaker. And I'll say it right now just to begin with. I also want to let you all know that there will be some time for question and response once I'm done, before you guys get dismissed into some breakout rooms where you can talk even more about some of the ideas that are presented in this presentation that I have here for you all today. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The title of this talk, this way to, I think, ground the theme for this particular conference is social change, relationship, thinking, and practicing small, okay? And small does not mean insignificant, all right? I just want to say that from the beginning. Small does not mean insignificant. As you might have heard in my introduction that Dr. Jaskin so nicely read for me, a lot of what I do with this work is the presentation, I know, of work that is ongoing, right? I am not giving content that is brand new to me, or it's new to me at times, but it's not new to the world. I'm not the first person to say any of these things, but it is important to amplify in really intentional directions and to remind people who I talk to that there is a legacy, a lineage, and a foundation for a lot of the principles that I will be talking about today. And a lot of what I draw from, the majority of what I draw from, is the existing work of people of color, women of color, trans, non-binary people of color, because they have a lot of insight about what change is needed, what change is necessary for the world that we live in order for it to be more equitable. And so I just like to, I have a lot of quotes, all right? As you'll see, I don't have a lot of text, right? You won't have to write a lot of notes from my slides unless you want to, you know, however you want. But I do use a lot of quotes. I like to collect a lot of memes, all right? So you'll see those on here as well. But my opening quote here is just a reminder of this, there's nothing new, if you will, under the sun that I just sort of tried to say right now. And that's from Octavia Butler in her novel, The Parable of the Sower. She has a line that I love because I think it encapsulates how I want to share. And I hope, you know, pray for me, guys, or send me well wishes, whatever is your thing. But I hope my intention is reflected from what Octavia Butler describes in this quote from Parable of the Sower. And that is that I'm trying to be clear. All right, I'm trying to be clear. I'm not trying to be fancy or even particularly original, okay? I just want to be clear. I want you to have some nuggets of things that you can take with you you can apply even today, starting right here, right now. And so that's the intention that I am coming from in terms of clarity. So let's get this party started. Let me start my timer because as a teacher, I can hold the floor now. All right. So we start out with this principle, and we start with a quote. We start with a meme from influential organizer and poet Sonia Renee Taylor, which gives us a place to start when we're thinking about what do we need to do in order to be the change? How do we facilitate a community and an environment that is equitable for everyone, all right? And I like to start with a reminder that whatever system that we're talking about, this is Carroll Citizens for Racial Equity, so race is the big one in the room, but I'm an intercultural person, so I also know that race intersects with a lot of other identities, right? Race, class, location, gender, sexual orientation, all of those things. But the reminder here from Sonia Renee Taylor is that all systems, whatever they are, these systems do not maintain themselves. Even our lack of intervention is an act of maintenance. Every structure in a society is upheld by the active and passive assistance of other human beings. Okay, things don't happen in a vacuum. Whether or not we like to think about it, even the things that we don't really want to celebrate, right? If this is a topic and we're talking about race, talking about racism, all right, racism still exists because there are practices that we collectively as a community in different ways, all right, we uphold it in our active conscious actions, perhaps. But what I like to get into are the ways that we uphold it in the smaller, perhaps more passive, more unconscious bias type of ways that we continue to uphold these ideas, all right, uphold these systems like racism or sexism or any kind of ism and oppression that exists. So this is a reminder from Sonia about that, okay? And this is the human condition, right? We're never quite who we want to be or who we think that we are, but we aspire, right, to be something that is greater. But just a reminder that when something isn't working, people are responsible, right? We collectively, right, this room right here, right now, today, we're our own community today, all right? So when I say we, I'm a part of this as well, all right? When something isn't working, there's something that we can do, all right? Or there's something that we're doing to maintain that thing. And there's something that we can do to change it, all right? So, Here's my first activity for us, okay? If we know that systems pervade or systems continue to exist even when we don't want them to, okay, and there's things that are beyond our control, I pulled a couple of memes, all right, that I think identify how we sometimes have things in our communities that are problems, okay, and we get in our own way. All right, I have 3 memes here. I will read them, and I want you all to just think about which one of these maybe resonates with you the most right now. Okay, just based on where you're at today, based on what I've said so far, whatever it is, but which one of these resonates with you so far? And I'm just gonna ask people to raise their hands after I read through all of them to say, you know, this one was for me right now. All right, this one is the one I connect with the most. Okay, so here are a few that I think highlight this idea of we're never quite, we're oftentimes not quite as far ahead or doing the thing that we want to do as completely as we actually want to do it. All right, so let's start in the top corner. All right, here we have a quote from a poet, Swim Soul, and she says, "Everyone keeps calling for community, but no one wants to learn conflict resolution. So the community dissolves at the slightest conflict." Next, we'll go to the bottom here, bottom corner, from James Baldwin in The Fire Next Time. James Baldwin says, "There are too many things we do not wish to know about ourselves. People are not, for example, terribly anxious to be equal. Equal, after all, to what and to whom? But they love the idea of being superior." Last, we'll come over to a quote from a poet, Joel Leon. Joel says, "Things are rarely ever just black and white. There is nuance everywhere, in everything. The more we limit the range and scope in which we can investigate public and heart matters, the more we remove ourselves from the opportunity to create loving and intentional spaces for us all." All right. So, who feels like the first one speaks to them right now where you're at? Everyone keeps calling for community, but no one wants to learn conflict resolution. All right, so communities fall apart at the slightest conflict. I'm asking you to select one. Which one are you drawn to the most right now? It could be all of them, but for the sake of the exercise, just one. All right, one. All right, hands up, hands up. Look around, look around. Who are your people right now? Okay, all right, so that's the people in the room who feel number one. All right, number 2 from James Baldwin. All right. Number 3 from Joel. All right, look around, look around. All right. Now, really quickly, I know I didn't tell you this part, but surprise. Does anyone want to say in one breath why you were drawn to the one that you were drawn to? Not a whole long thing, just one breath. Why were you drawn to the one you were drawn to? Yes, sir. Because we should pay attention to anything James Baldwin says. I agree with that. Well said, well said. All right. Yes.
To go with the third one, even though I kind of know that they didn't probably literally mean black and white. Everything isn't black and white.
Yeah. Everything is not black and white. It's shades of gray. That's where I like to play, right? Shades of gray is where most things are usually happening, but we like to have a conversation usually on the black and white. And we'll get into that later on in the presentation. Thank you for that. All right, let's get one more. Yes, you here with the blue face mask.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. Good morning. I think of the one in white, bottom, equality, humanity. Equality equals humanity. Yeah. Humanity equals equality.
Yeah. These are ideas that we're grounded on. Now, thank you for the 3 of you. There's some more memes coming up, so you have more chances to talk. All right. But yes, absolutely. Right. This one with equality, James Baldwin, I agree. Pay attention to anything that James Baldwin is saying. All right. This one, it speaks to me as well. That's the one that I would have chose. And I would say that, you know, we talk about equality. This is Carroll Citizens for Racial Equity. But the reality is, we have very few models for true equity, right? True equality, right? Where everybody is really just equal, right? Even in a family, even in a classroom, right? I'm standing up here in front of you guys, right? I'm in front, I'm not sitting with you, right? Like, I assume that we are equal, right? But there are very few systems, there are very few circumstances that we're in that everyone is actually treated as if they are on the same playing field, right? We are more accustomed to systems and to ways of doing things that actually enforce more of a superiority or a hierarchy, right, of how things are going. Okay, so this is just to ground us here. So then what do? we do what the theme for today's conference is, right? We have to figure out, excuse me, all right? We have to figure out, oh, I knew that was gonna go, all right. I'm Erin Watley, all right, just to reiterate, because my name tag is gone. All right, it just fluttered away, okay? Something has to change, right? If the normal is actually we don't do nuance, we don't do shades of gray very well, we actually don't do equity in a holistic way, that we don't, what was the first one? That we oftentimes fall apart, right? Because we don't actually do conflict resolution very well. Something has to change. If we really want the equity, if we really want that level playing field, something has to change. All right. And so my message for us today, in alignment with the theme for the conference, is we have to figure out how to be that change, right? And that's a phrase that is heard a lot. It's very a familiar phrase. It's familiar to me. But as I was sitting down thinking about it and preparing for this talk today, you know, I was thinking, okay, yes, be the change, right? We hear that, okay, yes, yes. But then when you really think about it, right, it's like, be the change. I'm just one person, right? These changes are big, right? We're talking about systemic changes, right? What's little old me have to do with, if I change one thing, right, how do I guarantee that that changes or has an impact on racism, for example, sexism, for example, right? Like, be the change, are we sure? All right. Then I was meditating really on the be, okay? There's a lot of ways that we talk about change where we emphasize you need to learn, right? You need to support, right? You need to do something for someone else, all right? And those are great. Those are important. Yes, those are necessary. We're going to talk about what role those play perhaps in getting change and doing change work, systemic change work. But really, what we don't talk enough about is us physically becoming, manifesting, practicing the change within ourselves, starting there. And maybe it's just for us, all right? Maybe it's just with us as an individual, right? Us actually becoming the change and thinking about what that means and what that looks like in our relationships, in our workplace, in our own self-identity, self-reflection, right? How do you actually become that change and do it is where I want to place the majority of the emphasis for today, all right? So be that change, become that change, all right? But then here's the issue, all right? We have another one of my favorite little social justice memes, all right? Who wants to change, or who wants change, right? We're all here. This is a packed room, right? I presume everybody here wants to see change, right? Racial equity. Yes, absolutely. Who wants change? Yes, hands up, hands up. Who actually wants to themselves change and be a different version of yourself than you are right now? Who wants to do that all the time? All right. I don't all the time, right? I also know human nature, we're resistant to change, right? Change is hard. Change is tough. And saying that you have to change, and especially for those of us who do this type of work, right? A lot of times we get pulled into the, I've done enough, right? I'm doing what I can. You're telling me to change again and change again and then change again. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if we exist in a world right now where we're not happy with the state of racial, social affairs, right? That means that if we're a part of this world and a part of this community, things as they are require more change. That means each of us has to change some more, all right? And again, I've got examples. I'll talk about what this looks like, but a reminder that we've got to change more. We have to keep changing, right? And changing for where we're at this particular time and moment and within ourselves. Here's my grounding idea and principle. This is not my own, all right? This is a theory of embodiment, all right? This is the most technical language that I'll give you all for today, all right? This concept right now is being promoted very well and built upon very well by a community justice leader, scholar, organizer named Prentice Hemphill. They actually have an organization called the Embodiment Institute. Look it up, I recommend it. I won't go too in depth in it, but I'll say that this principle of embodiment has actually been very helpful even for me in my own practice of doing this type of work and learning how to do it in a more sustainable way. This idea of embodiment takes the be and the be the change very seriously, right? How do you become that? All right. You become the change, right? By embodying, all right, taking into your physical self and putting out from your physical self, all right, these principles of practice with the intention not just for yourself, all right? This is a little bit different than maybe how we talk about self-help or the wellness industry or something of that nature where you change just for yourself. All right, this is individual doing and practice and repetition and experimentation and unique ways of doing things for the sake of community, but it's you that's doing it. All right, so embodiment is an idea that brings together these principles of individual practice for the purpose of community transformation. All right, embodiment emphasizes, all right, exactly how important and how crucial it is if we want social changes, if we want our movements to look different, if we want to continue to pour into racial inequity practices, then we have to be more serious about what we do in our individual lives on an individual basis, our daily practices, right? Not just, I learned this, I went to this conference, but every day, right? On a day-to-day basis, what is it that you are going to do, all right, to create better relationships and practices that are right there for us, that are frequently available for us, all right? The little things, right? How do you talk to yourself, right? How do you talk to your spouse, all right? How do you feel when you run into traffic on your way to the CCRE conference, right? And 695 is packed, right? And you're like, no, I thought I had enough time, right? And then you're a little bit late. Oh, wait, I'm just talking about myself right now, all right? But it's in those moments, right? What's bubbling up in you that maybe is a piece of something that actually contributes to or is at the root of some of these issues that we want to do better at, right? When I was on my way here and I ran into traffic, right, I've been meditating on this idea that I can only control what I can control, and urgency doesn't help me. All right, so I'm on there, I'm stuck. I'll get there when I get there. Why do I do that? Because I also know that urgency is something that pushes things through, right? That forces people to maybe make a decision, all right? Oh, we just got to do this. We got to get this law done, right? We just have to get to this particular place, right? Just get to this class, right? Just read this book, right? And urgency sometimes pushes us, but then we don't have time to actually savor and remember and be present, all right? And the principles of being present, all right, of being able to savor the things that otherwise we thought were unsavory is more helpful in our practice than urgency might be, even for something like undoing or addressing racism. All right, I'll connect those dots a little bit more later, all right? Oh man, okay, let's get here. All right, the last thing that I wanna say about this is I love this quote from Prentice, that says, fear says that's not possible. Embodiment says, but how would you do it if I longed for that? Doing this work, I encounter so many moments, so many times where people are like, yeah. Equity, inclusion, that's great, but it'll never really happen because these people over here just don't care, right? I'll never get this person into the room, all right? It's impossible, right? Because we're too far apart on the issue, all right? That's talking from a place of fear, all right? To say that something is impossible. When you're working with embodiment principles, you're saying, but what would I do if I assumed that it was possible? What would I need to do, right, in order to be a little bit more receptive from hearing from somebody who has a different perspective than me? That might be a long road, right? You might just have to start with, I need to trust that somebody's experience is legitimate in their own experience. That's hard to do. Okay? You might have to start someplace like that. But reminder that fear is what says that something is impossible. All right? But when we decide to do something, all right, we have the ability to actually come up with a myriad of very creative ways to solve problems and issues from our own experiences, positions, whatever it might be. Okay? To think about the possibility there is to start to move into embodiment practices. All right, I got one more set of memes and then I'm going to give us a little bit of a break. Okay? So, if these embodiment principles, right, what you do with yourself, all right, is also something that connects us to improving our community, what might those practices look like? What is the advantage of those particular types of practices? All right. A couple of memes here to identify how maybe we could think about that, all right, in a concise context. I'll read them really quickly, and then I'll ask the same thing. Which one is resonating with you? First quote is from Tricia Hersey, who has an organization called the Nat Ministry. I strongly encourage it. I won't get into it right now. But Tricia says, softness is available to us. Care is available to us. Rest is available to us. Intimacy is available to us. Community is available to us. Sleep is available to us. Justice is available to us. Pleasure is available to us. All right, a reminder, when you embody something, there are a lot of things that are actually available to us at any given moment. We just have to search for it and figure out what we have to do in order to find it, to connect with it. All right, next one from the OG, Bell Hooks. Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion. Last but not least, really the real OG, all right, Fannie Lou Hamer, all right, nobody's free until everybody's free. All right, which one resonates with you? First one, hands. Look around. Hands up, hands up. All right. Second one from Bell Hooks. Look around. And those of you on Zoom, you can raise your hands. Sorry, I forgot about. All right. If you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand accordingly. All right. Last one, Fannie Lou Hamer. Look around. All right. There may be many different things that bring you to which one you were drawn to, but just make note that in this room, right, you've got a little community of somebody who connected with the same thing. Can I get a couple of voices, one breath? Why'd one of them connect with you? Yes.
So for the first one, it's available to us, but are we connected with it? Are we using the tools that we need to make ourselves the holistic best person we can be?
Yes, it's available to us, but the question then is, are we connecting to it? Excellent, thank you. Yes, in the back.
Nobody's free until everybody's free, but there are some people that do not have access to the resources softness, KRS, intimacy, community, sleep, justice, pleasure, mental, mental state. Also, not everyone has access to the community, the belonging, the love.
Yeah.
They're isolated, but it's up to us to be aware and see someone in isolation and pull them in and understand the meaning of being free in the mental and closure.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Thank you very much. Right. Some people don't have access. Nobody. That's why we say nobody's free till everybody's free. Right. It's one thing to say, oh yeah, I'm good. Right. I'm through my healing journey. Right. I'm in an era right where I feel very comfortable. It's like, but everybody doesn't feel that way. So we've got more work to do. Right. The objective should be that this is for everybody. All right. One more. Yes. Oh yes, please. Yes.
So Mira mentions the bell hooks quotation amazes me. It's like people saying all they want to be is happy, but happiness comes from accomplishment, not a quest for an empty feeling. She nails it when she states that healing must be a communal experience.
That is beautiful. Thank you very much. And yes, thank you for drawing my attention to the chat. Thank you. All right. So to pull this in, right, the healing is an act of community, right? That what we have to do has to come from our body, right? That a first step is the physical manifestation of that. All right. I have a quick break for you all. All right. I'm going to do what is called a wellness break. And this is just a moment for us to actually check into our physical selves, right? I'm not being, it's not just an analogy to say embodiment. Right? When we say embodiment, it means our actual physical selves have a connection to a lot of this conceptual thinking, high level theory, maybe kind of stuff, practice that we want to talk about. It's like, it starts with us in the physical. We're here right now in a physical sense, or in our physical selves in the virtual arena. All right. But we're here. So I invited a wellness educator from Micah, the Art College in Baltimore, to lead us right now in a quick wellness break to put us in touch with and increase our awareness of our physical selves right now. She's also my sister. All right. This is Carrie Watley. Carrie Watley to the stage for a quick wellness break. Thank you, Carrie. I live here. I own my space, right? And something that I am not comfortable with in terms of volume in my space is absolutely out of the question, right? Have to call the authorities, right? Or knock on the door angrily, right? Or anything like that, right? There's a stereotype there at the top, but when we dig deeper, we're talking about control and ownership. And I mean, if you want to go to the roots of the matter for something like race or racism, right? We go back to the enslavement of people, all right, in a U.S. American context, all right, in particular. For us right in this room here, a lot of times we talk about this enslavement and the slave trade, right? It's like the root of that is hate, right? People hate each other, all right? And it's like, yes, hate is a part of that, but what was also underneath and foundational for that hate? It was the need for profit in an economic system, all right? And then we push forward this idea of who can we further subjugate in order to raise more money, more profits, free labor, all right? Those ideas about profit or ownership, all right, are things that we carry around with us all the time, okay? I live in a home that I rent, for example. In my community, as a renter, I am not privy to all of the information that homeowners get. Right? I don't get to go to the homeowners meetings, even though I live in that particular community, right? And I understand there are reasons for that, but thinking deeper about what does ownership mean in relationship to community, right? Because I don't own my home, I'm not as an equal part of that community. I don't like that. All right. That's an idea of ownership that we might carry around, even well-meaning people who, are anti-racist and all those sorts of things, but you might still hold on to, no, ownership is really, really important. And I just say a deeper interrogation of that is, well, why? Why is ownership so important? Why is profit so important? Why is control, for example, so important? Asking ourselves those questions and where it might show up on a daily basis, all right, is some of the groundwork of that embodiment of things that you can bring to a community that you can think about changing, right? Where does control show up in my life? What do I need to control? Kids, my class, all right, as a professor, okay? But I'll also say that as a professor, as a teacher, when I relinquish control, I actually have a lot of great classroom experiences, right? You teach me, right? You tell me what I'm missing. I'm going to sit down, right? You guys, you let me know, all right? This isn't interesting to you? Tell me what is. I don't have to have absolute control in that classroom, in that space, all right? In this presentation even, all right? Thinking about those sorts of things, all right? And last, what I'll say for this is a process. You have to change, you have to interrogate, you have to think about these things over and over again. You have to take them in, you have to transform yourself over and over again in order to continue doing this work, right? There's no destination, or there's no absolute destination, right? It's the journey, right? Like that's the saying, right? It's not the destination, it's the journey. All right. But here with this transformation, the embodiment, you have to transform yourself again and again and again. And that's just part of doing this type of work. My other conceptual suggestion, all right, is do more to eliminate our polarized and binary thinking. Okay. This is another one that shows up everywhere. All right. All the time. The way that we talk about politics, the way that we talk about even race in this country, right? A lot of times we use a shorthand for talking about race issues as black and white, right? The racial spectrum, A, is made up, all right? And B, all right, is so much more than just a classification of black or white, but that's the shorthand that we use for that, all right? Black or white, red or blue, Democrat, Republican, conservative, progressive, right? We have a lot of ways, we have a lot of binaries for organizing our thinking, but those binaries keep us from accessing the possibility that could be there if we were to think about that exchange or that relationship a little bit differently, right? Maybe more community is accessible to you if you're not just thinking about conservative and liberal or progressive, right? What else? What other ways could I make room for community? All right. A lot of what happens is like, but that, there's contradictory things that are taking place. All right. People are contradictory. I was just at a conference this last week where I listened to a speaker who talked about the fact that we cannot be on a quest for perfection. We can't be on a quest for perfection when it comes to who we want to work with, right? Or who could be a part of our team, for example, right? If you're not on board with this, right, you can't sit with us. And it's like, well, they're still concerned with undoing racial justice, or not undoing racial justice, improving racial justice. All right, get that right. All right, all right. They're still on board with that, but maybe they want to do it differently. Okay. Thinking about who could still be in the room, even if there is some contradiction, quote unquote, involved, right? And all these things take deep thought, right? I'm not saying automatically embrace this person who says that they actively say that they hate you, right? If you're working at the extremes and it's only the extreme, that's probably not the place for you to start, right? I don't want to start my journey for community building saying, how can I make the people who actively hate me be my friend? All right. That's not what's most accessible to me. What's most accessible to me is actually who is close to me now, right? How can I do a better job of demonstrating the thing that I need or asking for the thing that I need with the people who are already closest to me, right? I think we live in a world where people don't listen enough. I just think we're not very practiced at listening well to others, all right? Am I going to say, how do I make somebody who hates, I don't know, critical race theory and DEIJ work, they hate it. I was like, how do I make them listen to me? That's not my ministry, okay? But what I can do is I can practice, how do I listen better to my spouse? How do I listen better to my sister? How do I listen better to my students? Okay. I can embrace that, right? That's more accessible to me. And that will give me the skills, right, to build up to maybe then down the road, all right, I can strategize what kind of conversation I would have with somebody who is perhaps fundamentally opposed to the thing I believe is so important, like racial equity and justice. Right? But I can't get there until I start to master that skill with who is closest to me and more available to me along the way. All right. So embrace that's a part of the process, right? And there's contradiction there. All right. I think it's also important that we harness and use the positions that are our dominant positions. Okay. I know a lot of times when we're having conversations, particularly about race, it might be about, well, we need to have white people who come and they listen to people of color, and they're there in the room and they're organizing along with people of color, and you have a community that's built like a coalition. Yes, that is important. But what I think we still don't have enough of is people working along the dominant identity and just amongst them, AKA white people talking to white people. Okay. And talking to white people amongst themselves when people of color aren't present. Okay. And not just talking about how they're going to help people of color, talking about how do they experience whiteness, right? Talking to other white people about the experience of being white, right? Because I could never understand that. I can't speak to that. All right. But that is in the work of what white people need to do, right? And should be encouraged to do, right? Because they have that dominant position when we're talking about race in the context of the United States of America, and more broadly, all right? But that's where you need to go towards, right? Go towards that dominant position that perhaps you have and talk with each other, right? About what resources you might have, what contributions could you make to community without having to ask for help or the labor of other people of color, right? What can be done? I know this isn't new for the people in this room, all right, but it is a reminder that focusing our attention in that direction, focusing your attention in that direction is very useful, right? When we're talking about gender, it's the same for men. When we're talking about class, it's the same for people who have more capital, more wealth, all right? When we're talking about religions, right, it's important. We live in a Judeo-Christian society, right? So people who are along those bounds, right? Talk about what you can do amongst yourselves, all right? And to use that and to harness that towards the work of undoing these systems, okay? It also includes, all right, the fun one, all right, which is a subset of this. Where can you give up more power? All right? Where can you give up a little bit of that, right? I gave the example with the teacher in the classroom, say, you teach me, all right? Is it in the meeting, right? Is it in that relationship? You have the position of power. You have one more often. How can you give it up? What does that look like? In a friendship, all right? If you're the one driving things the majority of the time, are you able to let somebody else take the wheel for a little bit? Okay, so giving up power, finding places to do that is also important for us to do. All right. So when we go back to this idea of thinking and practicing small, all right, again, small things are not insignificant things, as I said at the very beginning, all right? Do not dismiss the small work, all right? I really do believe, having done and been sort of related in this DEI kind of space for, I don't know, over 10 years now, maybe about 12, 13, all right? That this is the part that we haven't been doing, all right? We haven't been paying attention to the small things, all right, to the ways that show up. I think a lot about the movement that started taking place in 2020, right? I mean, yes, it was COVID, yes, it was lockdown, but there's also a lot of movement around social justice type issues, right? Putting things forward, right? Spurred, of course, by the tragic murders of several people, all right? But that energy was being put forth, but a lot of the energy was more so in the, what do I read? Who do I talk to? What do I listen to? Who do I donate to? All these things that are external, right? A lot of external practices, not as much talk about the small practices, right? How do we actually do this community thing? We still don't really have a full model for what that could look like. All right, what does that look like for myself? You know, what contributions do I need to do, or what things do I need to do for myself in order to keep doing this type of work? All right, for me, it was a lot along the lines of rest. It was like people said they're, you know, I'm tired. This is tiring work. It's draining. Yes, it is. So I need to rest more. I need to find ways to do a little bit less. You can't pour from an empty cup, as they say. All right. So the small task of figuring out how can I find rest for me, all right, was an important small thing for me to really take in and to do. All right. That might not be the thing for you, but you can find a small thing and you can practice on that. Right. I looked for rest in a number of different ways. Right. I said, I'm gonna take a week off. Nobody talk to me. Right. Don't call me. I don't want to see the dog. None of that. I'm going away. I'm going to a hotel. I went away for a week. All right. That was one version of rest. All right. Another one is just, this is my quiet time. I'm taking a nap. I'm done for the day. All right. Those sorts of practices, again, then give me the energy, all right, to be able to do some of this more. All right. But the small practices matter. The small practices are important. It is our daily practices, how we interact with each other, our thought processes, all right, that we need to really think and meditate on with some more intentionality towards undoing oppression in a lot of different ways. That is where we need to focus our attention, all right? And the small then becomes the big thing, all right? The small things that I'm saying, right? Maybe it's like, oh yeah, that seems easy. All right. If that seems easy for you, if you've mastered rest, you got to pick something else. All right. If you say, I gotta work on my patience. All right. I got to work on my idea of ownership or control, right? Like maybe owning something isn't the end all be all to define my life, right? Maybe it's not. All right. How do I unwind from that? How does that show up when I'm talking to somebody? The recommendations I might give them for a job, right, or the next step in life, all right, how I'm moving through my environment, all right? Those small things are for and can be done for the good of a bigger and broader community, all right, the collective. All right, I will, last thing on my slides before I give you guys some more memes. It's from another favorite author of mine, Adrienne Marie Brown. And she just says, small is all. The small things make up the big things that will get us to systemic change. All right. So I've got 4 more memes for us. And then we will have a little break and some Q&A time. All right. So the first one, I'm not going to read this whole quote from Clarissa Estes, but I'm going to read the title and the first sentence. And she encourages us by saying, "You were made for this. Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach." I'll go over here to the image, all right? That's a spiral aloe plant. I know that's not the technical term for it, but that's what it is, all right? And this reflects from what Adrienne Marie Brown said about small is all. She writes a lot about fractals, which is actually a mathematical and science concept, which is just that something at the small then replicates out the same pattern, though, as it gets bigger and bigger. Right? So we have in the middle there, it's small. All right, those small leaves are growing, but they're growing in the same pattern as what then is out on the ring of things. Okay, so this idea of fractals, that what you practice at the small level, how you interact with and talk to yourself, all right, eventually is going to ripple out to an impact for you, yourself, and your community. Okay, so this idea of fractals, and this, I use the image of the plant because it shows up in nature a lot. Okay, there are a lot of examples in nature of these fractals. All right, I'll move to the bottom corner here. A quote from Rumi: "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself." And last but not least, a quote that I couldn't attribute. I couldn't find the source. Apologies. All right. But it's the small habits, how you spend your mornings, how you talk to yourself, what you read, what you watch, who you share your energy with, who has access to you, that will change your life. The small habits. All right. Can I get a few hands? What's resonating? The first one, you were made for this. Look around, see your people. All right. The plant and fractals. All right. Look around. Got a few on the edges. Rumi. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself. Look around. All right. Last one, it's the small habits, how you spend your daily life. All right. Great. All right. In one breath, can you tell me why the one resonates with you that it does? And can I go to is there anything in the chat? Okay. So in the audience, any? Yes.
The last slide at the bottom, who has access to you?
Who has access to you? Yeah. Who are you allowing in your space? And how are they allowed to show up? All right. I know we have counselors in the room. Like I said, I don't want to step on any toes when counselors speak and boundary setting and that sort of thing. I know it's in there. I know it's a part of it. All right. So yes, who has access to you? Yes. Yes, you.
I think that the bottom one really, something that's important or came up for me was thinking that it is important, of course, how we direct our own attention to things, but also allowing for that duality of here's what I exist in the world that I'm attracted to, the things that really draw me in, but also can I allow myself to open up to things that are not within that picture and that frame. So sharing your energy with people that are different from you, or allowing yourself to ingest and digest other things that open up your world.
Yes. Fantastic. Thank you very much. All right. Maybe one more? Yes.
So the bottom one, the yesterday I was clever, just because you can only control yourself, and that is, control and power, but it's inward instead of external.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. All right. So in conclusion, I have two quotes, but I'm only going to read one. All right. The lovely Alice Walker. I will leave her longer quote for later for interest of time, but I will leave us with this quote from Leo Ado. All right. You can find them on Instagram. So Leo Ado. And it's just, I've had enough of thinking about what I can't control. What can we create? Okay. And I love that. All right. Because in the essence of releasing control, there's so much that you cannot control. There's so much going on in the world. I cannot control anybody else outside of myself just by sheer will. All right. But I can create spaces, right, that might make it more likely that somebody will be more comfortable, feel like they belong, all right, feel like they are welcome, takes down a hierarchy, right, that I'm not putting myself over someone. I can create those spaces. We can create those spaces with people who are like-minded along with us. So what can we create? That's it. All right. So what I will do now, I will say thank you. All right. We do have a few minutes that we can take for Q&A, but what I want to do first is I want you to take 5 minutes to just sit with this, or maybe you have a question, something you want to share it with a neighbor, somebody who's close by to you. Thoughts, reflections, all right? What made sense? What didn't? If things didn't make sense, that's okay. All right, you can unpack it with each other and maybe a little bit with me in a second, but take a few minutes just to sit with this, all right? Reflect with somebody close by, and then I'll come back in 4 minutes, and then we can do a Q&A for about 10, all right? Okay, so in a moment, I will dismiss us to some breakout rooms, but before we go to the breakout rooms, are there any burning questions or comments that you all want to share with the big room before you go to your smaller sessions? Questions, comments? Oh, yes.
I just wanted to say I really appreciate the extent to which it kind of gets us all ready to sort of work together in this very positive space that gives us permission to be small, right? Because so often in our minds it's like, well, I can't tackle that big thing, so then I just get discouraged and anxious. But like that permission to be small and actually have that be the point.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Julia. Permission to be small. Yes.
Just pick up on that comment and think about it more organizationally, because there's a lot of organizations represented here today, and agencies and organizations are at different places on the continuum, and to be able to acknowledge where people are, kind of using your frame of reference that you shared on an individual level, I think just has such value on a agency and organizational level.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gary. Yeah, the value for organizations, individuals, it definitely is. Like, I really like that fractal idea, because it's like, if it's small, how do you plan to grow it, right? And how do you grow it intentionally outwards for organization, within a family, within a friend dynamic? You know, it's really malleable from my perspective. And that's why I'm very drawn to it, right? It can be abstract, right? And that it's not like do X, Y, and Z, follow these 5 steps, right? And then we'll have a anti-racist society for all. It's like, no, we're all uniquely positioned humans, right? With different interests and backgrounds and skills. But from those, you can do small things that are still contributions, right? And you can do them for the sake of community, not just for the sake of yourself, which I think is really important. Thanks for highlighting that. Right, anyone else? Yes.
Something that my mom always said about activism that I really loved about rest is that it's important to rest so that you can be active while others are resting.
Yes. It's important to rest so you can be active while others are resting, or others can be active while you're resting. Either way. All right. All right. I love that. Yes. Thank you. All right. Well, sounds like I've solved all racial problems in 45 minutes. Yes. All right. All right. Not really. But what I do want to do is you all will have the chance to unpack and think about this in some smaller breakout rooms, and even maybe, some smaller, maybe 2 or 3 person conversations. You should already have the questions for the breakout room with you. It was a handout flyer that you could have picked up at the tables when you signed in. All right. Let me see if I can pull them up here. Oh, Ian, can I get some help? Yeah. Yes, please. And I'll pull them up here for you all to just see really quickly. All right. These small group discussion questions, in case you don't have them, just to give you all a frame, you can see it so you know where you're going with the conversation beforehand. And these are broad, right? I really want you to take these in the direction that you are so moved, that's relevant for you and where you're at right now. So how's this sitting with you, right? It could be mental, but it could also be physical or spiritual, all right? Like, is it making you tense? Do you feel more relaxed, right? That's worthwhile for conversation. That's worthwhile information, all right? And then we can get into more particulars of what does it look like for you to embody change, right? What does it look like for you to manifest that from yourself, all right, to you right now, all right? Be specific to your experiences, background, skill set, growth areas. All right, I have to say this to my students all the time, right? It's like, what could you do? And they're like, oh, we could be friends with everybody. And I'm like, are you going to do that? And they're like, no. I was like, okay, well then that's not what you would do. Okay, what would you actually be able to do, right? In your position as the person you are right now, not the dramatic change, that you want to see for the whole world eventually, maybe, hopefully someday, somewhere. All right, what can you embody today? Right now, from where you're at the moment, all right? And then how might you be able to create change by practicing something new and small? I'm not trying to overwhelm folks, all right? Something new and small within your community, right? What's something that you haven't done or you would like to do better that you could master, practice some more with somebody else that might look different, okay? What can you do within your community, and be specific to that, right? I'll just say one for myself. I've just been thinking a lot about imagining possibilities. I think we don't have enough imagined possibilities for what change could actually look and feel like, right? It's not just a rule change, right? Or a different class or course or theory, right? It's like, what could it really look like, right? I was having doesn't matter. I just had a long conversation with somebody in my family, though, about why do we have money? That's not to unpack here, but I'm just saying, I was just imagining, what would a world without money be like? I don't know, but we can't get there. We can't think about the ramifications of it until somebody's imagining it, right? Practically, right? You got to start somewhere. And imagination for me right now is something that I'm playing with that's kind of new within my community. And then what kind of community support would you need in order to consider that action successful? Again, these are on your terms based on what you need, what your community looks like, what your organization looks like. But these are the things that we are going to have some time to talk about in small groups and in your breakout groups of about 20 people.